Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another true crime video. If you're new here, my name's Ella and welcome. Like, subscribe, turn on post notifications. I post true crime videos once a week. So if you like true crime, make sure you do that so you can see every single time I post. Today we're going to be talking about a case you probably have heard of at some point. Whether you know it or not, you've probably seen her face. So as you can tell by the title, today we're going to be talking about Isabella Guzman. This is a case that went viral on TikTok after it happened, but we'll talk about that after we talk about the whole case. Let's just get right into the video. Isabella Guzman was an 18-year-old girl who lived with her mother and stepfather in Aurora, Colorado. Isabella had a really rough relationship with both of her biological parents. She never got along with either of them. She was overall just a troubled child. Eventually, her parents got a divorce. This was when she was around 7 or 8 years old. However, they were always on good terms. There was never any arguing between the two of them. So they kind of stayed friends and just carried on with life even though they weren't married anymore. Isabella was supposed to live with her mom, Yeonmi Hoi, but when she was 7, her mom sent her away to live with her dad for a while because she just couldn't handle Isabella. She said she was just misbehaving, she could never do anything right, and for a 7-year-old to be so out of control that their mother can't handle them, that says something. It's not like she was a teenager, she was 7 years old. So she sent her to her father's house, Robert Guzman, who was supposed to try to fix Isabella, make her more respectful, make her just behave. And eventually she got sent back to her mom's house and nothing really changed when she was back. They still didn't get along. Isabella still acted the same way, and the relationship between Yeonmi and Isabella was exactly the same as it was from the time she had left. And this would soon be a common theme that Yeonmi would realize in her relationship with her daughter, is that things never really got better. So when Isabella's parents were still married, they had bought a photography studio together. And when they got divorced, they couldn't really afford to sell the studio. They had to keep it, they couldn't get new jobs, and they worked together. But like I said, they were on good terms, so this wasn't super hard for them. Isabella had occasionally had to work here when she was younger, and she just hated it. She hated the studio, she hated people in general, she hated her family. As she got older, she started to hate her mom for keeping the job at the studio and not doing something that paid more, because, you know, running your own studio, that's not gonna pay a ton unless you're super successful. And the friends and family of Yeonmi said she would sometimes work up to 12-hour days just to keep the studio up and running, just to make a living for her family. She is described as someone who is a really hard worker and would put in the work even though it might not pay back as much as she put into it. And by these same people, Isabella is described as angry, ungrateful for what her mother does, just hateful towards her mother, who was doing everything she could to support her and give her a good life. So like I said, Isabella was a troubled child. She had always been troubled. Her grades weren't terrible, but they weren't great. So she was just an average student, but you could tell that she hated school. The school system was just not something that was ever meant for her. When she turned 18, she started missing school a lot more. Her grades started dropping even lower than they already were, and eventually she ended up dropping out. And when she dropped out, it was right before finals week, so her family was super angry and disappointed that she didn't just stick it out for the last few weeks to get her diploma. So around this time, Isabella really stopped spending time with her family completely. When she was home with her mom, she was in her room. She really didn't want anything to do with anyone. And when they did talk, it was arguing all the time. So Yeonmi remarried after her divorce with Isabella's father, and she married someone named Ryan Hoi. Isabella hated that her mom got remarried because she felt that her father had been replaced, and she also hated Ryan because he was the replacement. Isabella would go as far as almost getting into physical fights with Yeonmi and Ryan. She would spit at them and just do really disrespectful things that most kids don't do to their parents. And it was just a really, really bad situation. Isabella was out of control and her parents could hardly take it anymore. And eventually Isabella started sending her mom threatening emails and texts saying things like, "You will pay." And she basically felt that her mom had treated her terribly from the time she was a child. So after these threats from Isabella, Yeonmi and Ryan became scared of her. They actually called the police on her for these threats. So that is all from Ryan and Yeonmi's point of view. Now, from Isabella's point of view, the story looks completely different. Isabella claims that ever since she was a young child, she was the victim of abuse. Her parents and her stepdad were Jehovah's Witnesses, and this is a super strict religion. I believe they don't celebrate holidays. They have really strict rules that they require every member to follow. And Isabella decided when she was about 14 that this wasn't for her, that she no longer wanted to be a Jehovah's Witness. And she says at some point she told her parents this when she was about 15, so after she had really made that decision for herself. And she says that after this the abuse worsened because she didn't want to be a part of what they wanted her to be part of. So there's no proof that Isabella was abused as a child. Friends and family of Yeonmi, Ryan, and Isabella's father say that they saw no signs of abuse Isabella's entire childhood. They said she had a pretty good life from what it seemed like. Now that doesn't mean there wasn't any abuse going on. It happens all the time behind closed doors where nobody can see it. But usually people would be clued in on it a little bit, especially people close to the family. But there was none of that in Isabella's case. On August 28th, 2014, Ryan called the police again. This time because Isabella had sent her mom another threatening email saying that she was going to make up for what she had done to her. So Robert Guzman, Isabella's father, came and talked to her after this first police encounter. He basically wanted to try to get through to her finally and just say, you need to change the way that you're living and acting, and you're 18, you need to get your life together. So he says they were sitting in the backyard talking about how kids should respect their parents and about what specific changes needed to be made in her life. And he says that he actually felt like he had made progress. He says he felt like there maybe would be some positive changes seen in Isabella and Yeonmi's relationship and in Isabella's life in general. And so he had went home thinking that Isabella was maybe actually going to change for real this time. After the police were at their home, Yeonmi had gone into work for a little bit just to give Isabella some space, and Ryan had stayed at the house with Isabella. That evening, Isabella stayed in her room almost the whole night, which wasn't completely out of the norm for her. Like I said, she didn't like to talk to her family anyway, so she was just up in her room. It seemed like a normal night. That all changed when Yeonmi got home at 9:30 p.m. She told Ryan she was gonna go take a shower upstairs and then get ready for bed. He said he was going to stay downstairs and watch TV for a while, but then he would head to bed in a little bit. So Ryan heard the shower turn on, everything was completely normal, and then all of a sudden he heard a loud thump, followed by a lot more noise, a lot more little thumps and thuds, and just a lot of moving around upstairs. Then he started to hear yelling, screaming, and lots of banging. So Ryan ran upstairs, and he saw the bathroom that Yeonmi was in, Isabella was also in. Right as he got to the door, Isabella slammed the door shut and locked the door, and Ryan couldn't get the door open. So Ryan called 911. That's when he noticed a pool of blood coming from under the door of the bathroom. So the screaming went on for a while, but eventually it died down. He's on the phone with 911, they're waiting for them to come. Eventually everything kind of just goes quiet from the bathroom. And the last thing he heard was his wife Yeonmi say Jehovah, which means God in their religion of Jehovah's Witnesses. And after that, everything was just silent. He's still on the phone with 911, and he's not sure if Yeonmi is alive or what's going on. All he really saw was Isabella close the door, and then a lot of screaming and yelling and thudding. So suddenly the door swung open and Isabella walks out holding a knife in her hand. She was covered in blood, and all she did was walk downstairs. She didn't even look at Ryan. She didn't say anything. He said it almost seemed like she was just going about her normal night, like she had just gotten out of the shower and she was going downstairs. She seemed totally unaffected by what had just happened. So at that point, Ryan ran into the bathroom. He tried to do CPR on Yeonmi, but she was pretty much dead at this point. She had a lot of knife wounds on her face and neck, and she was almost unrecognizable. Her autopsy said she was stabbed 79 times, which there was another number that said 151 times, but I think it was 151 total injuries. There were more than one weapon used in this murder. There was the knife, and then there was also a baseball bat. There's no way to tell if Isabella used the baseball bat before she attacked her with the knife or after. I personally think it's before, and that's what all the thudding was, but there really is no way to tell. So after Isabella had walked downstairs, she had apparently left the house. By the time the police arrived, she was gone, and they sent out a team to look for her because she still had the murder weapon. She was considered dangerous.
With breaking news in Aurora this morning, police are now looking for this woman. They're calling her a suspect in a deadly stabbing overnight.
Although this seemed like a targeted crime at only her mom, no one really knew what she would do next. While she was in this mindset, she could have gone out of control and killed more people, so they needed to find her as soon as they could. The next morning, the police received a call from an anonymous person who said they thought they saw a dead body in a car. So the police went to check it out, and it was actually just Isabella hiding in a car. When she was arrested, she cooperated with the police. She was being charged with first-degree murder. Before she was taken to the police station, she was taken to the hospital. She did have stab wounds or knife wounds on her hands, and that is believed to be from slipping on the knife when she was attacking her mom. So she was taken to the hospital first, and after the hospital she was taken to the police station for questioning and a psychiatric evaluation. This was because everyone thought that since this attack was such a personal attack, she only attacked her mom, not her stepdad, who she also hated, and that she really seemed to make the attack go on for as long as possible. They thought there has to be something mentally wrong with her. So they gave her the psychiatric evaluation, and they found out that Isabella had schizophrenia. It turned out she had been seeing and hearing things for years, and that voices in her head would tell her to do these crazy things. Isabella said she actually believed that her mother was this woman named Cecilia, who the voices were saying she had to kill to save the world. And that's pretty much where her case ends. But let's talk a little bit about the TikTok side of things and how her case really blew up on social media just recently. So since this case was so crazy, so out of the norm, Isabella kind of became a TikTok star. After trial was already over, the case was 6 years old. So basically there was a whole trend where people would copy the faces that Isabella made in court. I don't know if this is due to her mental illness or just her being her, and it was weird because she seemed totally unbothered and not like she was there because she murdered her mother. And so people would play the Sweet But Psycho song over clips of her, basically because they thought she was pretty, but she obviously was a murderer. And I think this TikTok trend was kind of dumb. With so many young people on the internet not even knowing the facts of this case, they kind of made it just a trend, detached from what really happened. So yeah, I think it was kind of stupid and insensitive, but there was a whole TikTok trend. That's kind of how her case got so much attention. So let's talk a little bit more about the trial. So Isabella was tried as an adult since she was 18 years old, and I actually read that there were some death penalty charges she could be facing. So Isabella and her team pled guilty, and they basically said she was insane and that is why she committed this murder. She was totally out of her mind, and that wasn't Isabella, that was the mental illness. And her insanity plea was accepted by the jury. So she didn't face any prison time for this murder at all. However, she was sentenced to an indefinite amount of time in a psychiatric institution, which basically means that she will be in a facility until a medical professional determines that she's no longer insane. So she could potentially be there her entire life. She could potentially be released as soon as tomorrow. So there's really no way to know when she'll be released or if she'll be released, but she could be there her entire life. Today, Isabella is in the Colorado Mental Health Institution, and she's 25 years old. She believes that she's a completely different person than who she was at the time of the murder.
If I could have chosen a different path now, I would have. I can't change the past.
And she actually has tried to appeal her sentence a few times, and all of the times have been unsuccessful. So basically she's on meds for her schizophrenia that calms her down and makes her a little more normal mentally, and she doesn't have the voices in her head and all that stuff. But if she was released, there's no way to tell if she would be taking her meds, so she could potentially go back to exactly who she was at the time of the murder. And I just think people wouldn't feel safe having her released this soon after the murder. It's only been 7 years, and like I said, there's no way to guarantee that she takes her meds when she's not in a place where she's being forced to take them every single day. I believe that she will be in that institution for a much longer time, possibly her entire life. And it's sad because it's not really her fault that she has the illness, and she could spend the rest of her life basically locked up, even though it's not prison. So yeah, that is the Isabella Guzman case. If you guys enjoyed that case, please leave a like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. And if you want to leave a comment of another case you'd like me to do, I would love to do cases that you guys want to hear about. Also follow me on Instagram. I think that's all I have to say. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next true crime video. Bye!